webinar, I would like to introduce my glitterati of educators who are here with us. So I'll begin with Raghav Podar, who's the chairman of Podar Education, that was established in 1927 and has schools span India. Having studied the education system of Finland, Singapore, UK, and Australia, he has been invested heavily into upgrading the quality of schooling in India. He supports the Beti Padhao Beti Bachao Yojana, as well as Tata Memorial's Impact Foundation that focuses on children's cancer treatment for the poor. Oh, Mr. Raghav, that always brings tears to my eyes whenever I read this. He has been bestowed with many awards for his contributions in the field of education and nation building, including the Bhaskar Pride of India Award and the Glory of India Award by the Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand. A very warm welcome, Mr. Raghav, and I'm humbled to have you for this webinar. Thank you so much. Next we have, thank you. Next we have Melissa. Melissa, I'm not going to pronounce your surname. I'll make an error. I tried, but it's such a, I found it difficult. So Melissa Giorgio. Am I right, Melissa?
Perfect. Giorgio, yeah. Perfect.
I practiced a lot. She's the Masters of Education, mindfulness teacher, is an education consultant and mindfulness coach with over 20 years of experience in both fields. Currently, she lives in Finland with a family. She's passionate about soft skills in the classroom and in life. For over 15 years, she has taught students in Australia and the UK. Very warm welcome, Melissa. Humbled by your presence again. Yeah, thank you. Next, we have Vishnu Karthik. He's the CEO, Xperiential Learning Systems and Director of the Heritage Group of Schools. Apart from being on the board of the Heritage School, he's also responsible for strategic projects for the group, including new campus initiatives, curriculum development, instructional leadership, continuous school improvement, and technology integration. He's also a co-founder and trustee of the Center for Conscious Parenting. A very warm welcome, Vishnu. Happy to have you with us. And Vishnu, when Heritage brings back such nostalgic memory, because it's like 2002 when the school started, and I was associated with Manit, and it's really, really nostalgic. Thanks again, Vishnu. Next, we have Suzanne Perkowsky, a passionate educator with broad global experience in teaching and educational leadership in Finland, India, Singapore, China, US, Saudi Arabia, and the UK. Suzanne, have you left any country? A strong belief in the renowned Finnish education system has led her to teaching and leadership certifications from Finland and the UK. A very warm welcome, Suzanne. Happy to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
And thank you for arranging this and leading it.
Yeah, next we have Fatima Agarkar. Fatima, a very warm welcome, an award educationist. She's a veteran of 3 educational startups with close to 20 years in the education space. And Fatima is the founder of Agarkar Center of Excellence, where she combines a passion for sports and education. She's an award-winning educator, avid blogger, parenting expert, and is a consultant to several schools. Fatima's passion lies in skilling teachers through training, curriculum redesign, and strategic guidance to students. She's truly passionate and will be launching her book on parenting. I love that. All the best, Fatima, for that. And she's a sportsman's wife and mother. Her world is a family, Ajit and Raj. It's such a pleasure to have you, Fatima, on this webinar. Thank you so much. So before we move on to the questions, I will just request Deepika, let's get the mood of the audience. Can you launch the poll, Deepika, for everybody, please? Which flavor of ice cream best represents your mood today? Is it chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, coffee, or butterscotch? I would request everybody, even the panelists can join in. I'm sure it is fun. What we are.
Honey, I'm just going to say now I want to have one.
I promise you, I will send you as soon as things are fine.
From Delhi, with all the COVID restrictions.
Yes. So, Deepika, can you close the poll and share the results if everybody has, submitted their answers? Okay, so 29% coffee. Wow. 23% chocolate. Mine was chocolate. And so happy to have you all there. And thank you so much, Deepika. You can close the poll now. And I want to just say thank you to Panna Gandhi from Surat. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for being there. So we're going to begin the webinar, and let's bring in some energy, some passion, some happiness. I love the way Melissa is dancing because I think that's all we can do, hope and pray. And I'm very, very confident we shall overcome. We're going to get over this because every storm passes and every dark cloud has a silver lining. So we need to be totally upbeat, because I strongly believe in that book Secret, which is like a Bible to me. You need to emit, you need to give positive energy all around and everything changes. So it's all in the mind, and let's move forward. So my first question is to you, Raghav. I would like to ask you, teaching is a challenging job. The stressors of being in the classroom, online classroom nowadays, each day can catch up with us if we don't develop the skills and strategies to take care of ourselves, both in and out of the school. How do you think we can ensure that teachers remain stress-free during these stressful times? Over to you, Raghav.
Thank you, Shalini, for that question, and thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure to be addressing all the wonderful educators who are here watching this. A message before I really start my answer: please stay safe, stay home, ensure that you socially distance, wear your masks properly, and take care of those who are around you, because nothing matters more than that. To your question, Shalini, yes, you're absolutely right that teaching is a challenging job. Some causes of the stress emanate from the profession, but many emanate from home and other societal factors. Now, while stress-free is a good catchphrase, one needs to understand that some small amount of stress is absolutely normal and is handy to increase focus and energy. The problem lies in today's world of excessive and continuous stress, and the human bodies, or more specifically, the HPA axis's natural response to stress, and that is the release of cortisol. Now, this excessive and frequent cortisol release wreaks havoc on our brains and reduces the ability of the prefrontal cortex, or what is called like the CEO of our brain. It's right here in the front part of our brains, because it controls all the executive functioning, decision-making of our bodies. So this release of cortisol reduces the ability of the prefrontal cortex to perform at its optimum capacity. And it can actually make your brain reduce in size and reduce the synaptic connections between the neurons, the brain cells. It's incumbent upon us, the education leaders, to ensure a conducive work environment for our teams, as a stressed out teacher will not be able to deliver a good lesson. In most cases, a stressed out teacher will deliver a stressed out lesson and, as a result, infect the children with that same stress. Now, education is not a transactional phenomenon. It isn't just about transacting curriculum. The fundamental crux on what good teaching learning is based on is the human relationship. The learning center of our brain, the hippocampus, is located right next to and connected to the emotional centers of our brain, the amygdala. Science has repeatedly proven that the mental and emotional state of a person is the key factor to good teaching and learning processes. The beauty of the way God has designed our bodies is that we have inbuilt natural antidotes to stress and its accompanying friend, cortisol. These antidotes are what I call the dose to happiness. Now, what is dose? Dose stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Great. So this dose to happiness, but how do we get them? Well, our body releases them naturally when we do the things that our bodies were meant to do. Things like physical exercise, run, skip, dance, jump, play a sport, do aerobics, yoga, and through meditation and mindfulness. These simple activities bring back the oxygen circulation in the blood, along with those dose chemicals, and bring back happiness, alertness, and focus. Even doing just 30 minutes every day of brisk physical exercise, of whatever it is you enjoy doing, results in your body naturally releasing these good chemicals and reducing your stress. Now, Boston is known to be one of the cities which has the world's top universities: Harvard, MIT, Babson, Boston University, Boston College, and many more. But they're also famous for the marathon. One of the world's most elite marathons is the Boston Marathon. On April 15, 2013, very sadly, there was a bombing at the Boston Marathon. and 2 bombs were detonated, 3 people were killed, and hundreds were injured. In the months and years following this bombing, one of the things noticed was that across many universities in Boston, the teaching and performance levels of the professors was dropping, and in some cases, drastically dropping. Nobody could understand why. Many of the professors were devoting more time towards their teaching and development of their lessons and research than before, and yet all their indicators showed drops in performance. After a lot of study, a direct correlation was found between the dropping teaching performance levels and that in almost all these cases, the professors were previously avid runners or basic fitness enthusiasts who would go out and run in Boston. But after the bombings, they had stopped doing so due to the fear of running outside or because of the PTSD that they might have been undergoing. Their levels of teaching performance had a direct correlation with the decreased amount of physical activity and shifting to a sedentary lifestyle, which involved only work, and in many cases, burying their heads in work, even more work than they had done before. So let's make sure that we encourage, implore, and persuade our educators, our teachers, to get their daily time of physical activity and mindfulness, and utilize these antidotes that God has given us to ensure that we can achieve the highest versions of ourselves. Worrying does not take away tomorrow's troubles, but it surely takes away today's peace.
Thank you, Raghav. That was really very touching what you said. And it is a fact. You need to keep your energy level high. You need to be investing in yourself. I find a lot of people who say that I don't get time. I think if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of everybody around you? And I think a teacher's impact is so much that she's not only impacting those 35, 40 kids, but those kids are going back and impacting their families. So it's the inflow of energy, a positive energy. So teachers, I always say, are next to doctors, are true corona warriors. They have emerged during this pandemic. So thank you, Raghav, for those tips. And I do hope all teachers are listening to it. So invest in 30 minutes of exercise. So thank you so much. And let's move on to Melissa. Melissa, someone told me once, if I had meditation in my life as a child, my adulthood would have been more sorted. You're a mindfulness expert. So would like you to share with all of us its importance in education. Over to you, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Shalini. And thank you for having me here. Like Raghav, I'm really excited and impressed with these people around me. So it's really nice to be speaking. But to your question, your excellent question, first of all, I need to clarify that I'm not a mindfulness expert. I'm just a person who's interested in mindfulness and practicing and making mistakes all the time. So I just need to reiterate that I'm not here all zen and, have it all worked out. I'm up and down, with life and with life's challenges. So having said that, though, I was a school teacher in the past, and for about 15 years, I was in the classroom. And I'm also a qualified mindfulness teacher. So I've had experience with teaching mindfulness to children and seen the benefits of it firsthand. So it's really nice to be here and be sharing this stuff with everybody. But before I talk about your question of the importance of mindfulness in education, just for the people who might not be familiar with mindfulness, it's probably a good idea to give you a definition. And that is, because I think that the general understanding is that maybe mindfulness is just meditation, and it can be meditation, but it doesn't have to be meditation. In fact, it's so much more than that. So basically, mindfulness is sustained attention on what is happening in the present moment. So just observing what's happening and trying not to judge it and just accepting it for what it is, because at the end of the day, we really don't have much control over anything but our own reactions to everything that's going on. So mindfulness is about looking inward and just feeling okay and learning to accept what's happening within ourselves and what's happening around us. So having said that, life is challenging, and right now it's probably one of the biggest psychological challenges that we're all facing. So I want to, hopefully this is okay, Shalini, I didn't talk about this with you before, but I'd like to invite everybody to just take a mindful moment together. We're all here We're all here for a common purpose, and that is to enhance our own lives and those lives around us, which is such a wonderful thing. So let's just take a moment to drop back into our bodies and perhaps have a nice deep breath, which is really indicative of what's happening right now, that perhaps we haven't had a nice deep breath today. So I just invite you all to take a nice deep breath through your noses if you can, and then just release that breath. And as you do, just see if you can relax a little bit of your body. Just drop your shoulders if you can. And then just feel your feet. And that's the first thing I tell anybody that wants to know anything about mindfulness. Pop your attention down on your feet, whether they're touching the ground. Just put the spotlight of your attention into your feet and feel them. You might feel a little pulsating or throbbing there. And even if you're lying down, it doesn't matter, just put your attention there. So then that was the mindfulness exercise. That was just to bring you out of your mind for a moment and then back into the physical part of your body. And we've all got bodies, so you don't need any fancy tools. Just start with that anytime you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and just put your attention back on your feet, and it can really ground you in moments of overwhelm. But this is what mindfulness is all about. It's basically about kindfulness to yourself, because if we're not kind to ourselves, it's very difficult to be kind to others. And as far as education goes, there have been lots of studies into mindfulness in the classroom, and most of the research that comes out of that is that it helps, and that it helps with children's behaviour. It helps reduce teacher stress. So there are lots of positives about mindfulness. So it's a really lovely thing to incorporate into your everyday educational process. So nobody's asking you to sit, you know, having a zen moment for the rest of your lives every day. It's just about having the awareness of what's happening around you, and then responding to what's happening around you as the moment arises. But the biggest thing about mindfulness is in education that I'll leave you with is that in order for us to learn anything, we need to be in a relaxed state. So when we practice mindfulness, we're practicing getting our body into a relaxed state and opening our minds to learning, because we cannot learn if we're stressed, and that's a fact. So that's the most important part for me about mindfulness in education.
Thank you, Melissa. I loved that line, being kind to ourselves. You know, in a hurry, we forget, you know, about ourselves. And I think that is a very important point. I find that if we're kind to ourselves, then only we are going to be kind to others. So thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing that. So let's move on. And my next question is to Vishnu. So Vishnu, looking at the current scenario, I find school leaders, parents, teachers, they really worried about the learning loss, which has occurred in the past, 1+ year. What are your thoughts, and how can that learning loss be covered? Over to you, Vishnu.
Oh, so I think parents are rightfully worried about learning losses. In fact, I wish our government is equally worried about learning losses. I don't think as a nation, we've had sufficient conversations around learning losses in it. In fact, in the West, especially the US and a large part of the Western world, the summer vacation, for example, is much more longer than what you'd probably find in Asian countries. We have vacations for 2.5, 3 months, largely in sync with there's a legacy reason, because in those days, most children were part of agrarian families, and they have to be with their families during the harvest season, which starts from June, July, August, especially the family is into corn or wheat or potato. And schools used to shut down so that the kids can go back and help their families. Of course, nobody bothered to de-link the agrarian cycles to modern day nuclear family setups. But children abroad in the West still miss out about 3 months of school every year. And it turns out that, for every 3 months of learning losses during summer vacations, up to 60-65% of literacy levels are lost in most children. And numeracy levels, I don't know the figures, but they're equally astounding of what the learning losses are. In fact, for every 3 summer cycles, most children will drop by a year of learning. And often these learning losses are not thought of in the lifespan of the child. Now, these are summer vacation losses. One could imagine what could be the situation of children have been missing out school for more than 3 months, like in the case last year, for example. So learning losses are real. If parents think that children can catch up later, actually that's simply not true. For most children who don't have access to a technology or to a high-speed bandwidth, or not being a part of a community, which is a schooling community, which is not in a position to provide some learning support, they will experience learning losses. And unfortunately, most of these children, there's a very interesting OECD study as well, which came out in January, that children will lose up to 12 months of learning losses during COVID itself. And there is simply no way for most of these children to catch up eventually, because we simply don't have the bandwidth or infrastructure to help children catch up learning losses. So that's a reality of learning losses. And typically learning losses are more pronounced in early years. I think Raghav talked a lot about cognitive neuroscience. My background and training is cognitive neuroscience. And one of the things I keep telling parents is, it doesn't matter whether school's open or not. It doesn't matter what our feelings are with online learning. It doesn't matter whether we want children to be at home or at school or in a hybrid platform. But the truth is, our children's brain are going against a biological clock. And if they don't have a certain learning experience, there is going to be a learning gap. And the learning gap is more pronounced in areas of literacy and numeracy, because these are not natural for the brain to learn, unlike language is. You don't need a school for children to learn language, but definitely need a school or some adult in the child's life to learn literacy, reading and writing, and numeracy, of course, which is not natural to the brain. So learning losses are real. And I think responsible parents and schooling communities will figure out a sensible balance to help children support learning losses. But I also want to touch upon another aspect, which I think you talked about, Raghav and Melissa also talked about, is also the role of relationships. So it's just not about learning losses. It's also about children feeling safe in an environment where they don't have social connections, where they don't have friends and families in the physical sense. So the role of the school and the adults is also to ensure that there is a safe holding space in times like these.
Thanks, Vishnu, so much. So yeah, it is a thing to be a little worried about, and we need to actually start focusing, I think. Now, that's what I've been talking to a lot of people, that how do we cover that learning loss? What are the strategies? Because that's going to become a big obstacle in a year or two. But at the moment, of course, the focus has to be the child's well-being, because I think that's very important. It's a very, we never went through that kind of childhood. I just feel so sad that children can't go out, they can't play. It is such an abnormal life they are leading. And of course, we are all praying that things get back to normal and we lead a normal life. So thank you so much, Vishnu. And I move on to you, Suzanne. So Suzanne, New Nordic School Baccalaureate has mindfulness as an integral part of the curriculum. And during these times, it becomes more important to imbibe the same amongst the teachers and students. Can mindfulness also improve academic performance or behavior issues? Over to you, Suzanne.
Shalini, thank you for the question. And I really, really respect the opinions of everyone, Raghav and Melissa and Vishnu as well, of what you shared. And I'll get back to a few points on safety there when we speak. But I think as educators, everyone practices a certain level of mindfulness. And we've been doing it a very, very long time. Everyone's done it in their own way. When you think about yoga, it's been happening for a long time. And when we were founding New Nordic School, the three of us founders were sitting together. And one of the things Pia and Janne, who are the co-founders, practice is a lot of yoga. And it was one of the things that Pia had said, oh, we really need mindfulness. And it was an instant connection, because I've always practiced it in education, in without using the word mindfulness per se. But I think it does have an impact. But I think for it to have a really good impact and a really significant impact, it needs to be part of the school culture. Small practices help, absolutely. But when we adopt it as a school culture, as we've done in New Nordic School, and I have to say a lot of it with Melissa's help as well. And I know Melissa says she's not an expert, but she's wonderful. When we have it embedded and we grow with it, and when we're planning a school, we discuss mindfulness, we practice mindful practices in there. And when that has been set at that level, the leadership level, the founding level, it then happens organically through the school. And that's when it's really, truly happening and it's really successful. So then it's the leadership, the teachers, the staff, the students, and the parents. Educating the parents and getting them to understand is where the impact really starts to multiply. And with all the research that is available on mindfulness, there are a few things that really stand out. That it helps attention, it helps emotional well-being and safety. And when, Raghav, you pointed out to the safety aspect, Vishnu pointed out to the safety aspect, Melissa pointed out to the safety aspect. When mindfulness teaches us to focus in on our own thoughts and our own feelings, it brings that safety. It gives us a foundation on which to base our reactions, our emotions. And then when we react to people, we react with greater kindness, with greater compassion. And through the research, it says that the academic benefits of mindfulness, and Melissa's going to smile because I've learned a lot of this from her as well, is that it's cognitively, it helps children develop a lot more. And even adults, if we're reading a book and we're doing 5 different things at the same time, we're going to absorb only a small percentage of what we're reading. But if we're reading a book and we have everything else switched off, that's when we'll absorb more. And the same is true for children. And it also helps them, that automatically through that, you get more attention, but it helps them also engage with what they're doing. So they're not distracted, picking up your phone or listening to someone else or doing something else. It helps them engage more deeply with what they're doing. And that in turn, when you think about how kids feel about, academics and studies and the pressures and everything, it reduces the anxiety because they're able to engage more and they get more out of it. And then mentally and behaviorally, it reduces the stress. So if the anxiety is down, the stress is down, it brings greater emotional well-being, that's security. And this is something I learned also through some research, and I don't remember the exact research here, that it reduces self-harm. And I'm not talking about physical self-harm, but also mental and emotional self-harm. That, when you're getting anxious about things, you start thinking, oh, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm doing that wrong. And there's so many aspects to that. But when you're mindful and you're practicing mindfulness and it becomes part of you, you learn to deal with those emotions. And then on a social level, you have healthier responses because you're not reacting, instantly. You learn to then take in what is happening and react accordingly. And I read something, and I read something just yesterday or day before on an incident when a burglar was coming into a house and somebody opened the door and the burglar jumped out the window. This was somewhere in the States. And the owner of the house actually opened the window and invited the person in and said, instead of panicking and worrying, he just thought, okay, what is the reason for this? And started talking to that person and walking them through. He helped that person by giving them some money and said, okay, let me help you find a job. Because the person said, I am at my wit's end because we have no money. I have kids, I have a wife, I have rent to pay. I don't know what to do. And instead of condemning the person, they helped that person move forward. And it brought about a change in someone's life. And I think that connects back to that kindness, that safety, that well-being. That one simple act could have changed that, has changed that person's life forever. So it has a lot, there's a lot of connections in here. So I think we all need to, we say that, but as adults, and I know everyone on this panel is ridiculously busy. And I was thinking about this, and I actually spoke to Melissa this morning about this, and I said, there's so much happening. How often do we take time to be mindful for ourselves?
Absolutely, Suzanne. I think those were wonderful points. And, actually in saying what Raghav said, I love that line, that education is not just a transactional phenomena. It's about the connect. So I think, even in an online class, how do we create that, it has a lot of impact. And I understand, because I'm a firm believer, in mindfulness. I probably called it by different names, but
Exactly.
I, as a teacher, started that long time back, and just keep quiet, focus on your energy. But, it is, I think, a wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne, for that. And I'll move on to you, Fatima. So Fatima, it's a very relevant question, and a lot of children are asking me, so I'm very keen to know from you. As most sports season, practices, camps, everything has been cancelled due to the pandemic, and many school children and college students are experiencing a sense of loss and resentment. What advice would you give a child going through this type of situation? They're actually, they're not able to play, they're not able to do, there are no group sports, no school sports. So what do you think? How can they get over this?
Thank you so much, Shalini, for the question. And I'm going to say that when you go last in a panel discussion, I almost feel I shouldn't talk, because everyone's spoken everything that I wanted to. But I'm going to try and put it into perspective as far as sport is concerned. And yes, children have not had the opportunity to play outdoors. But I think with every challenge, there are opportunities to be innovative, creative. And quite frankly, the safety aspect that everyone's spoken about is critical. So to preserve that and to respect that and to know that we actually have a home, whereas a lot of families are caught, mourning and suffering, I think let's look at the positive. In any athlete's life, whether it's middle school, primary, high school, or professional athletes, there's always an off season. There is always a period of time where they take to focus on fitness, their core, rehabilitation. It is not possible to play all 12 months. Vishnu, thank you for pointing that out, that, Indian schools do not have a long enough summer break. All the 20 years that I've been in education, I bat for 9 to 12 weeks of holiday for the kids, because they need to go out and not be in a structure. Think of this now as an opportunity, children, young athletes, those who are, missing out that batting practice or those skills on the football field, as a period of consolidation. You can crib all you can, but Melissa will tell us that being mindful will also say, reflect, go into your body and say, I'm safe. At least I have a home. I have opportunities within this house. You do not need a 7,000 square feet fancy gym. You need a yoga mat. You need a few dumbbells. You need a skipping rope. You need base equipment. Melissa just taught us. You can just take a deep breath and that's enough. There was no fancy gadgets available. Treat this as an opportunity. Most athletes, I know I'm a sportsman's wife, and I know the rigorous career that he's had, the injuries that come out because of this constant play does not allow the body to recuperate, does not allow the body to be mindful. does not allow the body to be naturally in tune. Focus on the fitness, focus on healthy eating, sleep well. Hey, listen, a lot of the academies where top athletes are training at the moment have advised use this time offline. Watch videos, read those autobiographies of the top athletes, think about strategy, think about watching your own videos when you were batting. Pick up those where the bat is going down slower, or where you were pitching the ball, or that move when you were a forward or a defender. Did you get that right? Watch videos, use the time. There's enough for us to complain, but let's look at it about what we can do. So I call it mind and body. The mind aspect is critical at this moment because you have an opportunity that you will not have once life takes over, whenever that is. And we're hoping sooner than later. But you know what? Your house can become that gym. It's already become a classroom. It's already become a boardroom. It's already become an entertainment center. It's definitely become the master chef kitchen. What can you do at home? Help yourselves, clean the bed, jump up and down. Your squats do not require physical space. You know what? Yes, team sport does get impacted. But when I've spoken to a lot of athletes who are in team sports, you know what they've said? They are starting to internalize, again, mindfulness. They're starting to pick up on those chinks in their armor, and they're just going through visualization. A lot of the sports psychologists, a lot of the sports therapists talk about visualization. I know, Ajit's very close friend and the former captain, Rahul Dravid, did a lot of it. He would wake up in the morning and just visualize where the bowler was going to pitch the ball. Sorry, I tend to be biased towards cricket when I explain. It just comes naturally. I'm, sort of picked up on these conversations, but it will help children. If you just think about it, we do not, as Indian athletes, invest enough in the visualization process. Here's your time. Here's your opportunity. You're in lockdown. Use that. Create that, that pitch in your bedroom. See where those angles can be cut off. See where you can think about different surfaces. What is the science behind it? So much offline work can be done, which is education. Yes, the physical aspect in terms of outdoor play is restricted. What's holding you back from running up and down the stairs? What's holding you back from skipping? What's holding you back from jumping up and down your bed? That's all core, right? You do it in a fancy gym. You can do it in your house. Make use of opportunities. Mindfulness tells you that you have options. Not ideal, but don't use this as a period of mourning. Use it as a period of saying, how can I pick up those strategies? Read a Michael Phelps book. Read an Andre Agassi's autobiography and know how hard it was for them. Read Ronaldo, Messi. These are champions. These are celebrated ones. And guys, this one's going to throw you all off. Up another sport. You're a footballer, try chess. It helps you with your attention. It helps you also, figure out maneuvers. It helps you visualize what you can do because it's always about thought, thinking it through. Think about what skills can you pick up in alternative sports that are indoor so that when you're ready and to get out there, if you look at, I don't want to mention it again because this creates a bit of controversy, IPL. These guys went onto the park not having played together as a team. When they were in the bubble, they used their hotel rooms to train, to get there. They were talking to each other on Zoom. And when they were on the park, they put it into action. Okay, you can. It is possible. Gear yourself up. Fitness, healthy eating, sleeping, build those core. Use this as a period of actual rehabilitation. Get your body up to shape. And I know a lot of athletes have done that. Stay safe. Stay away. Don't go outdoors in these, traumatic and extraordinary times. Use every opportunity to optimize indoors. So kids, no complaining. Find, we're all talking about this cognitive development and how smart this generation is. Shalini, I know you worry about their childhood being lost. For me, these kids are pioneers of change. What this generation has, we never had. This generation has the ability to use the variables and optimize. And I'm pretty excited about it because even a 3-year-old is thinking of options, which perhaps we were dependent on an adult to lead us. I think this generation is blessed. I'm not saying I want to go through that if I was a kid, but here's an opportunity. So kids, take some risks, pick up some skills. Honestly, be happy that you're safe and indoors and your family is safe. I think start off with that. You'll find a lot of options online. And hey, listen, use social media to its fullest advantage, not just to post pictures of you cooking, but actually to pick up on what some of the other athletes are doing. And a lot of them are out there, including Roger Federer, including a Nadal, who's out there talking about what you can do. Podcasts, listen to a lot of them. Use this time to optimize. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Fatima. Those were really good points. Skipping, running down the steps and picking up a different sport, chess. Excellent points. Thank you so much. So we'll just move on to the next question, next round of questions, and I'll request all my panelists. Now, since we have, it always happens, you know, I love my webinars. I love having people, and there's so much to share. Actually, 1 hour is just not enough for it. So I'll request everybody to just time yourself. I don't want to ring a bell like a school, this thing. We must finish by 6:30. So my next question is to you, Raghav. And this is something, again, a lot of parents are asking. So the pandemic has caused significant disruption, you know, to all of our daily lives. And of course, Fatima suggested some very good strategies. But children are among the worst impacted, you know, being stuck at home. And of course, I love what Fatima said. But I would like to know from you also. I have seen many young people are very anxious and worried about their future, you know. The children in grade 12, they are very worried. The children in grade 10 are very worried. Any suggestions on how, as educators, we can support them during these uncertain times? Over to you,
Right.
Raghav.
Sure. And it's interesting that Fatima said that, you know, going last on the panel, I don't know what else to speak. And she had such wonderful, fantastic points that added so much of value to the conversation. And so many things that she has said is resonating exactly with what I'm going to be telling you right now to this question. But, you know, most importantly, you yourself, the educator, the parent, the ones who the child looks up to, has to be calm, composed, and self-secure. Now, if you're a nail-biting, stressed, anxious parent, and expect your children to listen to you when you ask them to stay calm and relaxed, it's not going to happen. Humans have the highest form of mirror neurons, and children learn by imitation. Now, you cannot say, do as I say, but do not do as I do. It doesn't work that way. Children can pick up a vibe from a country mile away. So as an educator or a parent, first get yourself in the right mind space, calm yourself, and half the battle will be won. Next, let children be children. Play is the work of childhood. And like Fatima said, you don't have to go to a fancy gym, or you can't, I understand you can't go and play with your friends right now outside in the park, but inside the house, what do you need? A yoga mat. Let them run, hop, skip, jump, dance, enjoy themselves, do aerobics. Let them do their favorite Bollywood dance for all I care. It doesn't matter. Get those chemicals in their systems naturally. Because living a sedentary lifestyle or one stuck in front of screens is detrimental to bringing out the best of children. Now, there was a professor at the University of Illinois called Dr. Chuck Hillman, and he did this wonderful study many years ago where he took a classroom of 30 students and he divided them into two groups. So group A was 15 and group B was another 15 students. Group A students just continued sitting in their class and studying whatever they were studying throughout the day. Group B, he took them out for a 20-minute brisk walk and brought them back into class. Then he did MRI scans on both the groups. And what was found in group A children, very low levels of activity in the child's brains, in the children's brains. So little bits of greens and yellows around the learning centers. The children of group B, who had spent 20 minutes, that's all, 20-minute brisk walk in the park and came back, had massively heightened levels of activity, especially around the hippocampus, the learning centers of the brain, and the prefrontal cortex, the area that controls your decision-making and executive functioning of the body. And that's one of the best things that I love about the Finnish system of education. And I've had many discussions with Suzanne and Pia and Jane about this. And after every 30 or 40 minutes, children have a recess or break. After every period of 30 or 40 minutes in the school timetable, They have a break of about 20 minutes. And what happens in that break? The children are just asked to go out and be children, run around, play games, just let loose. Now, this is one of the best ways to prepare the child's brain to take on the next lesson, as it refreshes them with their brain to absorb that next lesson better. At the end, all I'd like to say is that children learn best on their feet and not only on their seats.
Excellent. I love that last line, and thank you so much. And that's absolutely true. And I love, because when I was talking to Suzanne, she used the word, I remember, brain break, and exactly what you said. And yeah, I mean, that really energizes the kids. So thank you, Raghav. And I'll move on to Melissa, to you. So Melissa, there is, of course, we know schools are #1 providers for support system for a child. I'm not on mute. No, I thought I'm on mute. And, there was Yogi Krishnamurti who puts it beautifully that the highest function of education is to bring about an integrated individual who's capable of dealing with life as a whole. But most of the education today is fueled by competition, comparison. And there was a research conducted, by Harvard, wherein they tracked more than 1,000 people from birth till age 32, looking for what made them successful than others. And, it was not their race, culture, what language they spoke, where they came from, how well they performed. It was self-control. So how do you think parents can promote and help children, imbibe mindfulness at home?
Yeah.
Over to you, Melissa.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? But as Raghav just said, you can't, first and foremost, you have to know and help yourself, but you can't have the do as I say and not as I do attitude. So I just need to echo what he just said. And so that's the #1 tip that I've got for parents at home with their kids. Investigate yourself a little bit of mindfulness, for instance, or cultivating presence, and then your kids will pick up on that because they're always watching. And I also liked what Fatima said about the body and mind experience, and it reminded me of the quote by Aristotle. I don't know if this is perfect, but education of the mind without education of the heart is no education at all. And that's the heart of mindfulness as well, because we educate the heart and then the mind follows, or, not necessarily focusing just on the mind. So the other tips I would give for parents is to take time out to actually be with your kids. Now's the perfect time, so really be there for them. So I'm not talking about even directing play. If you've got younger children, you don't need to tell them what to do, just be there, and that's it. And if you've got older children, don't feel the need to direct a conversation or nag your children, just be there and try to understand them and just listen, So then the other thing I'd like to, give a tip about is this fascination that people have with entertaining their children. And we're so obsessed with it. And we do that, I think, because it gives us a little bit of time off. So it's very easy to pass your child a device. I'm guilty of it, so I'm not trying to shame anybody here, but let your children be bored. You don't always have to supply something to keep them engaged or entertained, because out of boredom comes great things. And it's okay to be bored. I think that we seem to be really scared of this whole thing, So just examine yourself why you might want to distract your child and see how that feels inside you. Is it because you actually need a break? And if that's the case, then you need to arrange ways that you can take a break. So there's that one. The other thing I would say, I've got 2 more tips because I had 5, my top 5, is just from the emotional side of things, accept and work with emotions, how they arise. So cultivating emotional balance is at the heart of mindfulness. So helping your children and yourself to understand that no emotion is bad or shameful. All emotions are as they are. Some behaviors are bad. So what comes out of difficult and challenging emotions, such as, say, anger or sadness, might be to hurt somebody else and all of that. So I'm not saying that's okay. That's a different kettle of fish, but all emotions are okay. So we need to be containers for our kids in these difficult times and allow them to feel what they're feeling, So I just want to, again, reiterate that these times are tough, and being present with your children and just allowing them to be who they are, and that is children with, as Raghav was pointing out, these brains that are developing all the time, and we're trying to build this prefrontal cortex, not minimize it. And the way to build it is just to be, and just to allow ourselves to be as we are. And then finally, I just want to talk about a couple of little breathing exercises, and I'm not do some practical things with your children, such as the baby shark breathing exercise. So, you know, ask your children to breathe in at the same time as the shark opens its mouth. So, and then close the mouth, and then close the mouth together, you know, for younger children. And then maybe for bedtime, you could take a soft toy and place it on their tummy, on their belly, and say, could you help relax this toy that's on your tummy by breathing in really slowly and relaxing the toy, and then breathing out really slowly, and just put that toy to bed as you're going to sleep. A few times, just a few breaths. We're not talking about anything that has to take a long time, but every now and again doing things like that. So that's all I've got to offer.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm going to practice that. I love that, the shark one. Yeah, I'm going to do it, and I'm sure we all will. So thanks so much. And I think that's I loved that. Allow children to be bored. You know, like when we were young, I just wonder today, we never had anything. We didn't have TV. We didn't have computers. We never had mobile phones. Nobody could trace us. We were very happy, you know, just being with it. We were content. I mean, I still remember in India, we had to stand in a line because I was in the hostel in LSR to call up my dad, who was in Dehradun. And we used to wait that after 10 p.m. because the rates were less. You know, that was the time, and there was nobody could, but there was a more of trust. Everybody trusted, and I think we came up pretty well in life. So thanks, Melissa, for that. I'll move on to you, Vishnu. So Vishnu, this is again a question which has come up by a lot of teachers. I'm not talking about the topmost schools, but a lot of schools in the B towns, the C towns. So they have been really worried about this. Of course, digital teaching prospects has become the new normal in the present scenario. But whatever extent the educators might try, you know, to put in effort in the planning, they are very stressed out because parents are still looking at it as very ineffective, you know. So, and it's not only I'm talking about the metropolitan, I'm talking about, because I've been in touch with, I don't know, thousands of teachers, and they're really, really stressed out over this factor because they're trying to put in effort, but they're very stressed out because parents are not accepting. So what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, it's a very open-ended question, Shalini. I don't have an answer to that. You know, unfortunately, our nation is plagued by bad teaching practices. We don't have a culture of strong instruction leadership or strong teaching and learning practices. Largely, our nation is still rote-based teaching. You know, technology per se is not a magic. You know, it only amplifies what you have. So if you have great practices, it amplifies them as. So that's why some schools have been very successful in terms of online teaching. And I recognize the fact that those could be privileged ones that has better access to resources, etc. That's not the reality for many of our children and teachers. But if you have a bad practice and on the top of it, you put something like an online teaching, so technology just amplifies the bad practice. So if the focus has been lecturing or teacher talk as the primary pedagogical tool, then of course online teaching is going to be a disastrous way of teaching in that sense. So of course parents are going to get stressed out, teachers are going to get stressed out. Unlike, you know, in many parts of the world, we don't have a strong public support system for our schools. In fact, you know, I in fact recently wrote an article, the unsung hero in the entire COVID situation, apart from the medics and paramedics, is actually private school teachers. Most of them haven't got their salary in full. They've not been able to collect fees. Much of the institution they work for has questionable survival prospects, at least in the next 6-7 months. Many have shut down, yet they continue doing what they're doing. despite poor training, lack of resources. So they've done an extraordinary work, but I don't think that is the society or the government or the public at large has recognized the effort they've gone through. I think Raghav talked about it. Their own homes are under struggle. They don't have access to multiple devices. They have children. They have, in fact, most teachers in our country, or not just teachers, they're also daughter-in-laws, wives, mothers first. In fact, they have to take another 2 or 3 families before they can take care of the children's family. So hats off to them, and they still have to do that. One of the things about stress is that Kelly McLaurin had done a lot of work around this, and I'm a practitioner of yoga for the last 15, 20 years, and I'm in sync with what Melissa talked about the need for mindfulness in our own lives. But I think that's important. That's a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient condition to bring about a transformative way in our own lives. I think a transformative way happens when we actually have a better relationship with stress. Stress is not bad. It's important. In fact, having a stress-free life kills you. In fact, Kelly wrote this book about the upside of stress, and I really urge a lot of parents and educators to read that. Stress is not bad at all. Not having stress is actually as detrimental as having stress. What's important is the way our brain views stress as. In fact, stress-free is not the objective. Meaning is the objective. Purpose is the objective. Not having a stress-free life is not at all an objective for our children or for a society or for our lives. In fact, we are not a very privileged society the way Scandinavian countries might be. And if Suzanne is here in this call, I think for the next 2 or 3 generations, we have to build this nation. If there's one realization parents and teachers and children should have, is that how poor our country is. How we are an utterly poor nation. We're not even a middle income nation. So the onus on this generation and next generation is to bring it to a middle level nation where it can afford to have beds, ventilators, oxygen. We don't need an emergency to put these things together. It should be a default public health system. And it's not an intent issue that we've not been able to build. It's we're just not rich enough for a country of 1.4 billion people. Now, a nation like us should understand that it is not stress-free. It is purpose and meaning which will make us more healthier, purposeful in life. So if teachers are feeling stressed, and I often tell teachers that, recognize that this stress is good for you. Of course, you do your mindfulness, you do your rituals, which my colleagues talked about. They're absolutely important. But without understanding that this nature of experience that you're going through can be used to your own advantage. Like, Fatima talked about yoga mats and stuff like that. Make the best of what you have in terms of physical constraints. That's true of our mental constraints too. This stress, if you view this as pursuing meaning and purpose in your life, that is good stress. That doesn't kill you. In fact, people who have this form of purposeful stress have the longest lifespans. I hope we know that. That's clear science on this. The people who die the earliest are people who are stressed. The next people closest to actually have compromised mortality rates is actually people who have no stress. The people who actually live longer are people who have purposeful and meaningful stress. So it's all about providing meaning in our own life. So in my view, the last 12, 13 months is stressful, but this is purposeful stress. And we view it that way and make it an opportunity, a window to build our own thresholds to manage stress. And I think that's a great, you've done good out of the crisis which we are facing right now.
Thanks, Vishnu. I think those were very valid points, finding a purpose, because you cannot be stress-free. And yes, audience, it is 6:30, but we are going to take 5-7 minutes because Suzanne is there and Fatima is there. They have to, and I have some excellent questions for them. And I want to thank you all who are writing in messages in the chat box. Just another 5 to 7 minutes. So I'm sure everybody can hold on. Thank you so much in advance. So Suzanne, without wasting time, I want to move on to you. You come from Finland, and where developing educator skill is more important, most important, and Finland being one of the best countries as far as education and the quality of teachers is concerned. So what are your suggestions for empowering teachers and ensuring their well-being? Like Vishnu said, that has to be a priority, so what are your thoughts on that?
firstly, there's so many thoughts floating around, but I'll try and keep it really succinct. But I think what everybody has said here is actually, I'm going to take one step back. Yes, I'm in Finland, but I grew up in India. I've been through the Indian education system. I've been to school there. I started university at St. Stephen's College and then moved on from there. So I understand very deeply and feel very deeply what happens in India as well, and trying to bring change. And change takes time. It takes leaders in change to enable change to happen. And I feel very, very grateful every time there's an opportunity for a forum like this to share views. And when we have people like we have on this panel, like Raghav, who actually has a school of ours, and unfortunately it was supposed to open the week all of this madness started. When we have Fatima, who's speaking up about looking at things from a different point of view, when we have Vishnu, who's saying we need change to happen, when people speak up, that's when change happens. And it's not fast, it's slow. And one Madhumita, I think, put a message on the chat saying she's actually taken one of our well-being courses, and it had a huge impact on her. Every person that we can impact in the smallest way, who then pays it forward, I think that's where the heart of what we want to do as educational leaders, that's the heart of it. But when I think of the perspective from Finland, and I'm not saying Finland is perfect, everyone makes their mistakes, there are bumps along the way, but the heart of why Finnish education is successful is teacher autonomy. And teacher autonomy comes from trust. And I go back to what I said earlier about culture, about creating a safe culture, creating a culture that is throughout the school. It has to start at the leadership. And then only then can it happen right through. Because firstly, trust, building that trust. But how do you build that trust? You have to have psychological safety. That everyone in any kind of group, be it a family group or a school group or an educational group, needs to feel safe. They need to know that they are not going to be reprimanded, they're not going to be hurt in any way if they make a mistake. And that goes back to one of our new Nordic School values of being bold and making mistakes. As soon as they have that psychological safety, that's when the trust is built. That's when they know they have the support of the leadership, they have the support of the parents, and when teachers feel that way, that's when it's going to have an impact on the kids that we teach. And I say kids and not students, because we need to make them feel safe, not as students, but as children. And Raghav said, let children play. That's one of the biggest things. And that's what Maria Montessori also says. Let children play, and play is the work of children. But we have to then in turn empower the teachers, empower the kids to take those risks. And again, we can only do that with clear, honest, open communication, by setting out expectations, by giving that security there, and leaving the space to make mistakes. So I tried to put it as succinct as possible in considering, because I really want to hear what Fatima has to say as well next. But really, that safety, that autonomy that comes is key.
No, thank you so much. And I was just reading the chat. A lot of people have appreciated the well-being course. So also, I would also like to tell the audience that they have a lot of online, face-to-face, and virtual PD sessions. And I'll ask Deepika to share the link with you, which you can explore and you can participate in that. So thank you, Suzanne, for that. Fatima, I'm going to ask you a very simple question, but a lot of deep meaning. I mean, a lot of depth. How can we build a resilient education system?
So
Because we
Shalini,
are
you're saving the best for last, is it? Or the toughest question for the last one? You've really put me on a spot. Okay, I'm going to sum it up. I know, there are lots of thoughts that have already been expressed. And like Vishnu said, it's kind of an open-ended one. We'll spend decades discussing this. But from all the learnings of last year, and if we have paid attention as educators and we've listened in on perspectives shared by global leaders, I'm just going to use one acronym, REFORMS.
yeah.
That'll put it all into perspective. It'll help me answer that question very quickly. The R for me stands for redesign curriculum content. I am appalled that we think the physical world will be replicated in the virtual world and we will have no dilution of content. Please, I do not mean we're missing topics, parents. We are not cutting down syllabus. But if you want meaningful engagement, if you want the child to understand, if you don't want the child to switch the camera off and freeze frame it, if you don't want the child to be playing games when the teachers are engaging, you will have to recognize we'll have to go deeper into learning, which is exactly what the new Nordic School talks about. Deeper understanding of core concepts, parents, educators, this is what the NEP is talking about. Core subjects. If you do not have the basic common sense, like Raghav pointed out, that if you do not create that mindfulness for learning to happen, like Melissa said, you cannot even achieve a higher order thinking. So let's get the basics in order. Let's look at the year that's passed by and say, first get the fundamentals in place. India as a country needs to start competing in PISA examinations. It's no good that we are scoring 100 on 100 in our national boards. We need to move away from the knowledge-based exam to now application. We spoke about it for 20 years, but it's time to implement. We're 40 years behind. Thanks to Nordic School for coming in and creating that disruption to say we need it. So redesign content. There has to be a rethink in the quantity and the timetabling. E stands for engaging assessment. For me, my biggest regret was that we took a decision only in March and April on, physical exams will be cancelled. Even Cambridge, even the IB, not willing to change their mind. How could you let those kids into the physical world knowing what we were going through? This had to have foresight, and therefore assessments need to be continuous, formative, summative, give those children a shot at effort grade. This is what I love about the Common Core standards. It's about effort. It's about what those kids spoke in class. It's about research. It's about assessing the child's learning story and not the outcome. So engaging assessments, rethink that teachers, rethink that school leaders, do not wait for the board exams. That's where a lot of kids have got gotten out. Mid-wicket, nowhere to go back. Think about that. Focus on life skills. Melissa spoke about kids being bored. I mean, please let the kids be bored out of their mind. That's when they will come up with their own ideas, ownership. You will not have to be stressed. Decision-making, consequences. Listen, this glamorous word coding is pretty much life skills in a nutshell. It's cause and effect. It's getting them to work out, sequencing, patterning. It's computational thinking in a glamorous word. Put right in perspective. Hey, put a price on it. Grade those kids when they demonstrate decision-making, empathy, being principled, when they're working on teamwork. Think about that, because for me, co-curriculars then comes in. You will start thinking about, sport, theater, music, drama as being subjects that can actually create content that's relevant, that makes sense, that they love, that puts them in a happy space. And hey, listen, we all learn when we're happy. So, important, the focus, the F, organization. I mean, you've got to understand that you have to organize your resources, build capacity, build capability. We've gone through virtual learning. We spoke about hybrid learning. In this country, we still do not have the ability. The teachers have not been skilled to perfection. They're not using gamification to the level that they should. We've lost 12 months. We didn't learn. So as educators, as parents, also parents, I'm going to put this in, you're going to have to start trusting the school. Organize your thoughts to start believing that this is not an academic loss. This is an alternative that is creating seamless learning. Optimize on what your child is getting through the online education, communicate with your school, let your school know it's not working for your child. It may be working for someone else's child. So see what the school can do to customize. And today educators are all about personalization and customization. And please don't give me this argument that this is for elite schools. This is for progressive schools. This is for schools in general. And we've seen a lot of CBSE schools in B town, C town that are doing this to perfection because the parent community supported it. You know what? The M stands for really mobilizing technology. This was introduced in 2000 successfully in a lot of schools worldwide. In India, 20 years later, we still didn't realize that technology is not screen time. We didn't realize the power of AI. Invest now. If you haven't built, and I know Heritage is a great example. Vishnu, I'm a big, huge fan of what Heritage has done in terms of technology. Raghav, I know Podar has been pioneering in the way they have built, mobilized their resources to say technology is here to stay. Let's use the intel. I think, Shafiq, Director of Economics at the London School of Business, has beautifully pointed out, anything that is repetitive can be automated. Now, with that definition, you will understand that without technology, your children will not survive the world. So it's alternative. So you're going to have to give them the opportunity to mobilize it and use it. That means you still have to be skilled yourself. That's going to be important. And the last one, you know what? I think we're going to have to seek collaborations. Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, New Nordic School, for bringing in global educators together. I think in this country, we've worked in silos forever. Thank you, Raghav, for always being a fan of international education. And I know Raghav loves his research. He's always picking, best practices from charter schools or forest schools and New Nordic as well. I think he's the most globally traveled Indian educator. What? I don't think that's only Raghav's priority. Today, virtually, you can and seek collaborations, make your life easier. Don't do stuff that's already been done. You know what? I think originality has its place, but collaboration has a bigger role. So for me, reforms, in a nutshell, will hold this country together. We already lost 20 years, Shalini. My eye is on 2080. I'm hoping we can course correct that back in time to hit it for a 6.
Thanks so much, Fatima, for that energizing talk. And I love the reforms. And I'm sorry, Melissa, you were very particular and we went 5-7 minutes ahead. So my sincere apologies to everybody for being there. So thank you, Melissa, for being there. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Raghav. It's always a pleasure, Fatima, to listen to you. Thank you, Vishnu, so much. I understand, you're not well, but it's like really, I'm humbled, that you have come here. And I think, thank you all so much. And thank you all the audience. And I want to thank Deepika, who has been helping in,